Hello students, welcome to today's tutorial class on Grade 12 Biology Unit 2 Ecology. In this lesson, we are going to study recycling of materials within an ecosystem. First, we need to describe what is ecology. Ecology is the scientific study of relations that living organisms have with respect to each other and their physical and chemical environment. There are specialized biologists who are responsible to study variables in an ecosystem like composition, distribution, biomass, number, and changing states of organisms. What is ecosystem? Ecosystems are hierarchical systems that are organized into a graded series of regularly interacting and semi-independent parts, what we call species, that aggregate into higher orders of complex integrated whole or community. Or in other ways, ecosystem is a community of organisms along with their physical or chemical environment. Why is it important that materials are recycled in an ecosystem? When we see the need of recycling in ecosystem is a dynamic unit through that substances are constantly recycled and is provided with sufficient amount of energy that are used to allow the cycle to take place. The sources of this energy is sun. Therefore, there are two basic natural principles within the ecosystem. These two basic natural principles within an ecosystem are non-cyclical flow of energy and cycling of matter within the ecosystem. Energy. This means energy is continuously lost as heat from the ecosystem and has to be replaced as light energy from the sun. What is energy? Energy is the property of matter that must be transformed to an object in order to perform work. When we see the basic principles of energy continuously flow in an ecosystem. That means it flows unidirectionally. Energy cannot recycle within an ecosystem. When we see recycling of nutrients within an ecosystem or biogeochemical cycle, nutrients always recycle in an ecosystem because nutrients are neither created nor destroyed. That means nutrients are a finite amount settled in an ecosystem. So the same atoms must constantly recycled or reused over and over again in an ecosystem. I think we need to define recycling. What is recycling? Recycling is putting or passing something, in this case nutrients, through a cycle in order to reuse these nutrients within an ecosystem. As we can see from the diagram, ecosystems create biophysical feedback mechanisms between living or biotic and non-living abiotic components of the planet. These feedback loops regulate and sustain local communities, continental climate systems, and global biogeochemical cycles. Since ecosystem is the sum total of biotic and abiotic components or factors, nutrients recycle between living things or biotic factors and environment or abiotic factors. But energy flows unidirectionally. That means energy always comes from the sun in the form of light energy and added to the living system or biotic component in the form of chemical energy. And also, energy is kept or lost from the living organism in the form of heat energy that cannot be recycled or reused by living organisms once it has been lost. As we said before, ecosystems are dynamic. That means materials are always being moved around within an ecosystem that can bring a certain changes on an ecosystem. Nutrients are always being taken in by organisms and lost when they breathe and excrete. That means what is a waste product to one organism becomes a vital nutrient or feed to another organism. All the organisms in the ecosystem are interdependent. None of living organisms can live without the existence or help of the other organisms. All living organisms also interact with their physical and chemical environment. What are the main processes that nutrients get recycled within an ecosystem? These main processes in which nutrients can recycle within an ecosystem are feeding, excreting, respiration, breathing, dye, and decomposition are the main processes that assist recycling of nutrient within matter and energy moving in an ecosystem. First, we need to see non-cyclical flow or transfer of energy in an ecosystem. As you can see from the diagram, energy is passed on from trophic level to trophic level, and each time about 90% of the energy is lost, with some being lost as heat energy into the environment through respiration, and some being lost as incompletely digested food. Therefore, primary consumers get about 10% of the energy produced by autotrophs, while secondary consumers get only 1%, and tertiary consumers get 0.1%. This means that the top consumers of a food chain receives the least energy. As we know, organisms lose their energy in the form of heat energy. Once these organisms lose this energy, they are unable to convert heat to any of the other forms of energy. That means once these organisms convert some chemical bond or light energy to heat, the conversion is one way. They cannot recycle that energy back into its original form. Living organisms can use many forms of energy, but not heat energy. When we see cycling of matter within the ecosystem from the diagram, nutrients pass from soil to primary producers, then to primary consumers, secondary consumers, and all these living organisms get die and decomposed to return back nutrients what they have received from soil back to soil. That means cycling of chemical elements required by life between the living and non-living parts of the environment, or the natural circulation pathways of the essential elements of living matter. These elements in various forms flow from the non-living or abiotic to the living or biotic components of the biosphere and back to the non-living again. In order for the living components of a major ecosystem to survive, all the chemical elements that make up living cells must be recycled continuously. The Earth has an essentially fixed number of each of the types of atoms of biological importance, and the atoms are recycled. I told you before, nutrients are neither created nor destroyed. In a sense, means they are settled on Earth in fixed number or fixed amount. Each organisms assemble their body from atoms that are previously were in the soil, atmosphere, and other parts of biotic environment. When the organisms die, the atoms that exist in this organism gets released and altered to be used by other organisms or returned to the biotic environment. Because of the cycling of the atomic constituents of the matter, your body is likely during your life to contain a carbon or oxygen atoms that once was part of your ancestors. Thanks to decomposers and autotrophs, that are the two groups of organisms which are specialized to recycle nutrients between living and non-living matter. As I said before, nutrients can enter into living system from the soil through the action of autotrophic organisms or producers, and then those nutrients pass on to the next trophic level in food web through feeding relationships. And we know that all living organisms on Earth are mortal, means they can die. When organisms die, thanks to decomposers that can break open dead bodies and release nutrients back to the soil.